I'm sure you have heard of narcissistic abuse, but do you know this can affect both men and women? Today, I have a very special guest who is going to help us understand what it looks like to be in a narcissistic relationship and how to heal from that abuse. Welcome to Living Intentionally, the podcast that empowers driven women to get unstuck and to take their personal and professional lives to the next level. I'm your host, Carmen. I am here to help you create the life you truly desire without burning out. And as a leading expert in living with amplified alignment between your mind, your energy, and your soul purpose, I'll be sharing valuable insights on mindset, energy, self-care, business, and much more. Plus, you get to hear from inspired women who have successfully built businesses and lives that are both meaningful and fulfilling. Join us as we dive into the topic that matter most and uncover the secrets to living intentional. So welcome to today's show. I think I'm breaking the pattern today because our guest today is not a woman, it's a man, and he is a life coach certified through the Life Coach School. His name is Kyle Miller, and he specializes in helping others heal from narcissistic abuse. He was in an abusive relationship for almost 14 years, and now he uses that experience to help others. And he has studied personal development for over 16 years. And are you ready to listen to this? 20,000 hours of podcasts and audiobooks. That makes him twice an expert. It was through this commitment to healing that he has been able to learn to love himself for the first time in his life. I'm so excited to have Kyle here because it is always assumed that women are the pure victim who are in an abusive narcissistic relationship, but you had a different story. And I want to bring awareness to the world to that because that's what happens to. So Kyle, thank you and welcome to the show. Thank you for opening your heart and sharing your story with us. And why don't we start by just tell us how did this happen?
Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. So I got married, and it's been, because I've been divorced now for about 3 years. And it was almost 14 years that I was in the relationship. And through that time, I did so much personal development work and really just, things progressively got worse through the relationship. And I think the biggest thing, that I realize now looking back, there were things that I saw that I just ignored, just red flags and issues in the relationship. And the beginning of the relationship, I was gone a lot because I worked 50 to 70 hours a week. I was a truck driver then, which was a whole nother life. But that's actually how I listened to so much of the personal development, because I would just listen to it all day long. But as the relationship continued to get worse, I felt crazy, and it really it was very hard for me to see what was actually going on, and that it took a lot of time and a lot of struggles, and I became a person in that relationship that I just didn't like. I didn't like me. I didn't like the life that I was living. And I couldn't figure out why it was that I was destroying my family. I mean, I worked on myself all the time. And there's the upside. There's the part that was good. I worked on myself all the time and all of that. But on the other side, because I felt like I was crazy and couldn't figure out how to fix or help or improve the relationship, and everything continued to get worse. And so, in that, I drank way too much for a long time, just because I could not figure out how to fix anything. And so when the relationship ended, it was, I felt like in a lot of ways, like I had cheated death. Um, I, I very much, I cried a lot and all of that, but I laughed a lot also, feeling like I had a whole new opportunity at life, and that I just couldn't believe that I had actually lived, to tell my experience. And so, in those 3 years, I've done so much work on myself, and that's when I went through and became a coach. And that was a pivotal part. I had lots of counseling, multiple different counselors through that period, but I had lots of coaching as well. And going through certification was the thing that really got me to a point where, for the first time in my life, I really loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it still is just an unbelievable experience. And yeah, and then now, I help people with healing with this now. And so much experience and all of my, knowledge of personal development and everything else has all kind of culminated all together, which has, continues to help me work through things that come up in my life and help with others, because it is a different and unique experience for sure.
This story, Kyle, I just love, by the way, just the calmness and the peace and the love that you use to tell the story is so beautiful. And it also encompasses the story of every woman that goes through this. It's not different. It doesn't have to do anything with the sex. There's the pattern, because I've been there before. So I'm like, yep, right? Like, there is red flags and we ignore them because, no, I mean, I must be crazy. Maybe it's not that bad. Everybody's like that. And especially if you have had a series of bad relationships, you get used to like the mistreatment. So you ignore the red flags, excuse me. Then you get into this relationship. And you said something very pivotal here that I've seen in my life, right? Because we are beings that are called to growth, right? We grow, some of us, right? You did, I did. We go into personal development. We, explore ways to make ourselves better. There's the whole awakening thing. And, we continue to rise, vibrational, mentally, emotional, all of those things. And if your partner is stuck in the mud, in the old patterns, in the old, beliefs, and just being their own self, you create this gap. Mm-hmm. And this is where I see a lot of people, and I was guilty of that, of like, oh, was it a bad thing that I better myself? Because now, like, it's almost like you become unreachable, emotionally speaking.
Yeah.
Right. And then so you start feeling guilty because you did something. Like, it was a good relationship. I broke it because I bettered myself. So then the guilt start, settling in. And then the gaslighting from the other person. Right. Oh, no. All these things you did, like, it never happened. I never said it that way. You're misinterpreted. Who are you? I don't like you because you changed for the better, but you changed, right? And then the shame. It's like all these like emotions of like, let me keep you stuck here. And you start questioning, like, should I get out of this relationship or not? And you'll be surprised. Well, I'm sure you know this because this is what you do for a living. That a lot of people don't get out. And then they go into unhealthy coping mechanisms, which could be alcohol, which could be drugs, which could be work, which is what I help my clients with, right? Like, workaholism is a coping mechanism to forget about what's out, and it's as bad for you as alcohol and drugs. And then a lot of people just stay there because society says that you go into this relationship and you should stay there forever. Even though you're miserable, you should stay there forever. So obviously we are not here promoting divorce, but we're promoting well-being. And if you have made a mistake and you have the tools to heal them, you should do that. So I want to ask you a question. How did you get out? Because getting out is hard?
So I was actually very lucky. I feel so incredibly lucky because of the situation. And what had happened is because basically I knew that no matter what I did, I was going to be wrong, and that everything was my fault, according to my ex-wife. Then I just began to shut down more and more. And I think a lot of what happened is I just was not good supply anymore. And because I just wouldn't respond to most things. I just was shut down all the time. And so the abuse continued to get worse too. And what happened, in the end was that it really, because we tried counseling and different things, which by the way, if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, going to couples counseling can be one of the worst things that you can possibly do, because they will use that against you, and use the counselor against you. But so after trying all of those different things, what I realized is that she didn't actually want to improve anything in the relationship. She wanted me to be a good little husband and do what I'm told and shut my mouth and
comply to the rules. And this is the way you walk. Yep. And if you take 2 steps to the right, you're not doing a good job, Kyle.
Yep. And so when I realized that, when it really hit me, then I said, okay, we need to have a conversation. And I said, I think maybe we should get a divorce. And she said, yeah, I think we should. I'll write up the paperwork tomorrow. And I was in shock. I couldn't, I was hesitant in going into the conversation because I didn't know what else to do. And it became, very apparent that she just wanted me to, just do what I was told and all of that. But I think that she was very much done with me. And it was a reverse discard, because all of the abuse had continued to get worse until I finally said, I think maybe we should get a divorce because I don't know what else to do here. And it was like, okay, yep. And I came home the next day and she had her wedding ring off and she had the divorce paperwork typed up. Of course, I was divorcing her. But that was all, yeah. I mean, it just all went from there. And so that's how I got out. And I feel really lucky because I see so many people that are in relationships where their partner does not want them to leave. I mean, they are still getting whatever they need from their partner, financially or otherwise.
Right.
Yeah. So I was lucky, I think, is the biggest thing that I could say.
Well, you count your blessings. So don't dismiss, what you went through because it was an easy way out. The first thing that hit me, I'm an intuitive coach. So the first thing that hit me when you're saying that is like, I am sure you've done your work emotionally and spiritually to the point where there was already a disconnection of, higher selves, right? Like where it was easy, like there wasn't any vibrational connection anymore. And that's really what happens. And that's one of the things, that I've had to do. It's, at a higher level, start that separation, because then everything happens so much easier here. So let me ask you a question. Do you guys have kids together? Because that's a whole nother level of complexity.
So I was a stepdad. And so I raised 2 daughters, and at this point I have a good relationship with them, but they don't have a relationship with me. And so how that, and I guess if people haven't heard that before, our relationships with other people are simply our thoughts and feelings about them. And so I have really positive thoughts and feelings about them. I reach out to them periodically, and And I know that at a certain point, either I will have the opportunity to have a relationship with them, or they will have an opportunity to have a relationship with me, or they won't. And I'm at peace with all of that, because the most important thing for me is just for them to know that I'm still here and I still love them.
That, by the way, is so beautiful. It's so hard to be a stepdad, or stepmom, and be, you know, and that thought of the relationship you have with someone is the thoughts and feelings you have about the person. That, I mean, we need to make a t-shirt of that. Like that right there, is gold. Like I would say definitely something I want people to remember out of this episode. So, you know, I tell you, you know, I have kids, and making decisions to better yourself and separate from a relationship that's toxic with kids involved, it's so hard. Again, the guilt and the shame, right? But one of the things, if any one of our listeners is in that situation, one of the things that helped me, especially with my, you know, having a daughter, I have two sons and a daughter, but having a daughter was, if I was looking outside, you know, and I was my daughter, what would I say to her? Get the fuck out of there right now, right? And what example are you giving them? Is it okay to be in this relationship? And by the way, so everyone knows, abuse doesn't have to be physical. Abuse can be verbal, can be emotional, can be financially abused. It's just a way of control, and at least this is my definition. And as the expert, I want you to add to it. But like for me, it was you know, when I felt that I was trying to be controlled, and like you were saying, you know, if I don't feel like all the checkbox or the expectations, which trust me, I don't know how to do that, then there's a problem. Anything else that you want to add to like what I really want to get into after we come back from the commercial break is how people know, because I think we're so conditioned to like, you know, you gotta stay married forever, and you know, you put your other cheek, you know, if someone hits you, you put the other cheek. Like there's all this like, how do you know this is not you making things in your head and you are actually in an abusive, narcissistic relationship? Right? Like, what are the signs? I want to give our listeners, like, if you are experiencing these things, you are probably in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, and you should think about, you know, healing, getting out, whatever. So let me go to a commercial break, and then let's come back to that. Hey there, looking for a breakthrough in your life journey? Well, I got great news for you. As a certified master intuitive coach and master energy healer, I can guide you and support you in unleashing your full potential. Let's work together to identify those subconscious blocks that are keeping you stuck, remove any emotional barrier, and reprogram the limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck into empowering ones. With my help, let's reframe your story for success and replenish yourself with light and love. You don't have to go through this alone anymore. Let's discover what's holding you back and make lasting changes in your life today. Go to the link below at carmenmentor.com to learn more about my coaching services and to schedule a complimentary consult with me today. Remember, it is time for transformation, and I'm so happy to be here to help you make it happen. Welcome back. Welcome back. Today we're here with Kyle Miller. We're talking about healing from narcissistic abuse. And we're going to delve into, how do you know you are in a narcissistic relationship? What are the signs? What do you tell your clients?
So much of it is very subtle. And I think this is the major difference between emotional abuse and manipulation and all of those things, rather than physical abuse, because when someone hits us, it's very evident that they hit us. Mm-hmm. With most of the emotional abuse, and depending on, I think one of the major confusing things also is the different types of narcissists. And so everything from the overt narcissists, which are loud and boisterous and, and they're abusive in those ways, all the way to the people that are neglectful narcissists, which they're the emotional abuse isn't that much that you can really pick up on, but they're very unavailable, and they just don't give you any of the needs that you have for an emotional connection or support or anything else.
So wait a second. So for the first time, I didn't know there were types of narcissists. So this is good. Like, I'm learning something. So is it a spectrum, or there's like 3, 4, 5 types of it?
There are multiple different types, but I want to say, and I think it kind of varies depending on who you talk to about all of it. But there are the most basic is there are the overt. So the loud and proud narcissists, and then there are the covert narcissists, which are usually much more soft-spoken. They might be introverts. They're much more victims than the overt narcissists, and I think that's kind of the major differentiation. And then I think with every single different narcissist, there is a spectrum. And I think that's one of the reasons it makes it so difficult for us to pick up on it, because we might say, well, they have a few of these different traits that I've heard about, but they don't have all of them, and with the abuse also, it's a much more subtle thing, and it's over time rather than. So with physical abuse, you get hit. That's obviously abuse. With the emotional abuse, I like to think about it as a long listen, because this little thing they said here isn't necessarily abuse, and this little thing here that they said isn't necessarily abuse. But when you look at the trend of all of those things together, that is abusive.
It's like a dead by 1,000 paper cuts type of thing.
Yeah. And I think that whether they know it intentionally or not, what they do is they set up every little thing that they say and that they do in a way that they can explain it away or justify it, or, you're making a big deal out of this. I didn't mean that. I was just joking. You're too sensitive, all of those things. And, but without someone that knows to listen for long enough to hear the whole story and the pattern of those situations, it's very hard for us to see it, which I think is why it's so hard for us to see, because especially when we're going through abuse, remembering anything that goes on at all is very hard. Memory just goes away from us. And
so good for texts.
Yeah.
When you get them in writing, it's like, are you actually reading your own text? Right? Yeah.
And I think that that also varies too, because there are many narcissists that they don't leave a paper trail. It's very hard for you to pick up on any of those things in text or anything else. They'll just make little comments here and there, and I think some of the major signs are that everything's a double standard. So, you need to make sure that you check in with them, that you talk to them, that you're accountable to them, but they don't necessarily have to be to you. And one of the other major things is that we're always wrong. We're always wrong, and we're always to blame for everything. And all of those things are a very consistent pattern. And I think one of the other major things is that narcissists just won't take accountability for anything. And even if they do, the kind of the only situations where they would are situations where it's with like a boss or it's something publicly that's happening where they say, oh yeah, yeah, I did that and I'm not proud of that. And, and they'll kind of halfway take accountability for it and halfway explain it away at the same time. But those things that will only happen usually if it's something where someone else can see them that is not the target of the abuse.
I want to share something because, I've heard from, my audience and, people around me. I'm often seen by, as a person of a lot of confidence, and I am very confident. I've worked a lot in myself for that. So with that said, you would think I wouldn't have to experience any of these things. So one time, I was in one of my relationships where it's like I keep attracting them, right? And we were at the airport and something happened with the flight, and I'm trying to figure it out with the customer service agent person. And this person who I was in a relationship with was talking to me the same way, talk to me always. So for me, wasn't like anything strange, right? Yeah. And the lady was like, sir, you don't need to be an asshole. She's trying to get you there. And I was like, it actually was like an eye-opening moment. It's like, oh, wait. Oh, he's not supposed to talk to me that way? Like in public? And so after that, I kept, I started bringing that up, right? And there was no accountability, like zero, like that never happened, right? And so not even because he was called out in person, right? Like by someone else, sorry. And so it's like, I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm not crazy. Like, this is not okay, right?
So one of the things that happened to me, which was a major pivotal moment in me realizing what had happened, is I had allowed myself in a lot of ways to believe that I didn't have any emotional intelligence or any empathy. And of course, that was helped along by my ex in many ways, but I also allowed myself to believe it. And so, which reinforced, of course, that everything was all my fault in the relationship because I just didn't have any empathy or emotional intelligence or any of those things. And I was talking with one of my best friends, and I said to him, I don't know. I just really struggle because I don't have any emotional intelligence or empathy. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, well, I call bullshit on that. And I've known him for 25, 26 years. And that moment hit me like a 2x4 in the head because it shattered the illusion that I was living in. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the major moments when I began to question, maybe that's not true. Maybe I actually do have empathy and emotional intelligence, contrary to what I've been told and what I've believed myself. But that was a major thing. And I think that one of the biggest things that happens, and remember this line for everyone out there, the best way for you to sell a lie is using some truth. And so, yes, it was true that I drank too much. It was true that, sometimes I would be angry and blow up, but the lie was not brought up also, which is, why, why all of those things. Mm-hmm. So narcissists will use all of the things that we, the vulnerabilities that we have, which they catalog, everything that they want to know about you in the relationship, they're cataloging for later so that they can use against you and say, well, this is why you're a terrible person. This is why, or justification for their abuse. This is why I had to do this because you act this way, because you do this thing. And, there's no justification for someone else to treat you poorly. And the other thing is that it is never an unreasonable request for you to ask someone to be kind to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know if you get this question, but like I was sitting here thinking, what if, because we try to justify them, right? Like we want to save this relationship. Maybe we are the one wrong. Maybe we're doing something wrong. So Kyle, what if they don't know they are doing this? What if they are not doing it consciously? Do you get that question?
Yeah. And I don't have a clear answer necessarily for every situation. I think every situation is different as to whether or not they know that they're doing it or they don't know that they're doing it. Now, to some extent, they do know that they're doing it because otherwise they would do it in public and they would do it in front of other people.
I love that.
They wouldn't be worried or concerned about you saying anything about the situations that have happened. They wouldn't tell you to keep your mouth shut, don't talk about family business, all of those things that they say to keep us quiet and not talking about the things that have gone on. They wouldn't be concerned about any of that. Excuse me. Those are major signs that to some extent they know what they're doing is not okay. Whether or not they consciously know exactly what it is they're doing or not, it doesn't
make it right.
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make it right. And I think that the other aspect is it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if they know or not, because if they're mistreating you, it's just not okay. Mm-hmm. It's not okay for anyone, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of this, just because I went through all of this, it doesn't justify any of the bad things that I did, or the blow-ups or anything else that I did, which is it's an important thing, but it's not something for us to carry and beat ourselves up with, because most of us do. I blew up there, so I must be a bad person, And it's okay for you to own your responsibility in those things that you have done, but it's not yours to own what they did to you, right, in order for you to blow up.
And then understanding that your reactions and anyone's reactions, right? But talking about here the guilt, like, oh, I did it too, or, I'm as guilty as they are in a different way, blah, blah, blah. Your reactions is nothing but you trying to survive. Yeah. Right. So did you react the best possible way? Probably not. Right. And so this is where the healing comes. The healing part comes there. It's the, how can I disconnect myself from that? Because it becomes a dance. And you said it so beautiful earlier, like you weren't a supply anymore. Right. So you weren't the dance partner anymore. So it's like, okay, well, I need to find someone else to beat up emotionally or whatever way. Right. And so when you can disconnect yourself from that persona and stop reacting, mm-hmm. then you are in your healing way, your healing path, and also empowered because you take the power away from them.
Yeah, very much.
That's beautiful. So Kyle, how can people find you, and what would it look like? Let's say, question: do you help people in the relationship that are trying to get out, or people who just got out of the relationship and you start, totally broken inside, or both? Or what is your ideal person that you like to work with?
So the ideal person for me is someone that is not in the relationship anymore. And they kind of understand what has gone on, but they're really struggling with moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I have and continue to work with people that are in relationships or kind of just barely out. But I think it's very hard for them, and it's very hard for anyone to really heal while they're in a relationship, mm-hmm. Because you never feel safe enough to actually feel all of the emotions and which makes it very hard to actually work through any of the things going on in your mind.
Right. And it's like taking a knife and keep opening the wound over and over, right? You need to let it heal. Okay, so beautiful. And so how can they find you?
So Kyle Miller Coaching on all the platforms. I'm on all the social media, and it's just Kyle Miller Coaching. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all of that.
Oh, you jumped into Threads too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I sort of did at the beginning, and I was like, no, I don't have time for another platform. Anyways, we'll put the links below in the description of the podcast. And it's been a pleasure to have you here. I'm so glad. You can now say you were the first man to come into Living Intentionally, the podcast. I know another, fellows will follow your footsteps, because this wasn't there wasn't a reason why not. So you just need to be the right type of man. So thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Hey there. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Living Intentionally, the podcast where we explore ways to live with purpose and fulfillment. If you're new here, make sure to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the Carmen Benton. I'm your host, Carmen Benton. I'll be back next week with more insights and inspiration.